Europe is like a big city. A place for all to live and work, move and meet, and enjoy life. Most of our people live in cities. They produce most of our economic output and also most of our emissions. That's why the future of Europe will be decided in cities. Yes, our world and our way of life are fragile. Good that our network of European cities is working for a better future for all in the city of tomorrow. Together, we are shaping the urban future.
Hello and welcome back for those of you who joined already this morning, and welcome to those who are joining now. This is the Eurocities 2020 annual conference. We are in the second session discussing the future with resilient cities. This morning, we already talked a lot about the future of cities. We had a lot of mayors expressing their views and concerns about the current situation, but also their optimism in facing these crises. And now we are joined by several mayors again and the Vice President of the European Commission to discuss resilience. How can cities and Europe stand stronger in the face of future crises? How can we reinforce the resilience of urban areas to mitigate the impact of a crisis for citizens? The European Commission has at the start of its mandate sharpened its focus on foresight, including for urban challenges. It has published its first Foresight report in September 2020 with the aim to inform policy developments and priority actions at EU level. At the same time, many cities are using the moment of crisis to rethink their future and develop different scenarios for urban development, supporting local policymakers to take charge of the main challenges and to avoid past pitfalls. In this session, we will discuss how the EU and cities can align efforts, making Europe future fit and more resilient in times of crisis. The debate will look at the main urban challenges ahead and how cities are preparing to tackle them. I also strongly invite you to use the Slido tool that you will find to the right of your screen to take part in this debate. The questions that you will raise there will be monitored, and I will do my best to integrate them into our discussion, and you can like and support the questions that you want to have raised in our discussion. I also invite you to share where you're joining us from, as we're building a giant word cloud which will represent all the different cities that are participating in this year's event. Also, make sure that you're engaging on social media, for instance, by using the hashtag Eurocities2020. So without further ado, I have the great pleasure and honor to introduce Maros Chefchevich. He is the European Commission Vice President, and he will give us his keynote address on the future of Europe, the resilience of Europe, and the work that he's carrying out on Foresight. So it is my pleasure, Maros, to introduce you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and I also would like to say that the good afternoon to all of the mayors, to all of the participants. But I think it's very important also to start our session by expressing clear solidarity to all cities in Europe, but I think these days especially to Nice and Vienna, because I think that we see that despite the fact that we are going under lots of pressure, especially you, the mayors, who are making sure that cities are working despite all the COVID pressures, and this time it's coupled by the security problems, by the terrorism, and therefore I just wanted to express really on behalf, I can say that the whole European Commission, the full solidarities with these two cities, and to really extend the hand for the close cooperation to make sure that we will tackle this crisis and we will also manage all these security challenges, which are fortunately from time to time coming back, but every time they are very devastating and terrible for the atmosphere in our societies. The cities are very important for our presence and for our future, and I think that their role is best described by the American philosopher Susan Langer, because she once said that the seeds of civilizations are in every culture, but it is a city life which brings them to the fruition. And I think that we in Europe know this phenomenon very well. And we see how cities are important, despite the fact that I think that performance of the cities and our life as such was really rocked to the core by the devastating pandemic which we are now fighting in all our cities and all across the Europe. And the cities are functioning despite, I would say, the typical heartbeat which you can feel in our agglomeration. It's much weaker and calmer than when we have a normal, usual times. I think we just had a little chat because we started our conference, the situation in Brussels, situation in Bratislava, but also in Vienna. These are the cities which I managed to visit within the last week are really testimony to how challenging times we are living and how these multicultural cities are suffering from the current constraints. And I think that this, what I would describe, would be kind of generational shock, because none of us remembers anything like that from the past. Is also met with the fact that it kind of pushes us to the extremely fast, I would say high-speed transformation. That the COVID crisis in this respect really played the role as kind of accelerator, especially in the field of green and digital transition. And I think it brought additional aspects of the importance of the cities in this overall transition. I think we have seen during the first lockdowns how the people appreciate much more quieter streets, clean air, green environment around the cities, and overall importance of healthy environment for our well-being. And at the same time, I think all of us, definitely me, we made a giant leap in how to use the IT tools for video conferencing, for work, for teleworking and home officing. And I think that this really would change also the paradigm of inner city travel or inner city work, and also on the way how we are communicate among ourselves, even though I'm sure that all of us prefer the physical contact. I think that one of the lessons of this very harsh time is that we need to equip ourselves better for the future. And therefore, I can also tell you that when we start with the von der Leyen Commission, we had these two priorities, green and digital. But I think COVID crisis clearly brought another very important pillar upon which we want to build our future, and this is resilience. Resilience of our economies, resilience of our societies, resilience of our democratic systems, and of course, the topic what we are going to discuss today, resilience of our cities. And therefore, when we did our first strategic foresight report, we very much focused on the resilience, how we should define it, what are the parameters, and how this can help us to equip ourselves better for the future. And I think that cities, to a great extent, already confirmed and demonstrated their resilience. You manage to secure the continuity of services, continuity of business, protecting the people's life. And when I was talking a minute ago about this nationwide testing, it would never be possible without absolute close cooperation and enormous work of municipal workers, be it in cities, smaller communities, villages. They've been at the core of action, and I think in all the fights against pandemia now and the future, it will be again cities, municipalities who will play the leading roles, because you are responsible for hospitals, for transport, for making sure that the citizens are properly protected, and that we would be developing the instruments how to tackle these challenges. So I think that today it will be also for me very important and very interesting to listen to your ideas. What should we do to be better prepared for future shocks of this similar magnitude? I am reading now a lot of interesting foresight papers, and One of them was referring to the future age as an age of pandemias because of the globalization, because of the interconnection of, I would say, all world destination and simply really millions of people traveling every day. What are your lessons learned from this crisis, and what can we do to do in the area in a public policy to secure better well-being for all Europeans, and what we can do in forming even better relationship between cities and the European institutions. I think that in this close cooperation, we can really build additional, I would say, pillar of making sure that Europe would be more resilient and better prepared for the future. Coming back for a second to the strategic foresight report, what we did was that for the first time, we tried to not only describe what resilience is, to cope with the crisis, learn the lessons and emerge stronger from it, but we also put it into very precise categories. We developed so-called prototype dashboards where we looked at the resilience from the aspects of environment, from the aspects of socioeconomic factors, from the geopolitical aspects, and from the aspects of green and digital policies. And I think that even though this data be quite known, when you cluster them in a way which reflects the level of resilience, I think it gives you the picture what we should do better, where we should invest more. And I hope that we will start the discussion on these criteria also for being able to monitor how we are going to spend the next multi-annual financial framework, which is the 7 years budget, but also this new instrument to kickstart our economies in this post-COVID times, which we call Next Generation EU. You know that I'm talking about 1.8 trillion euros, which is a lot of money, and I think we also need to have a proper monitoring tool to make sure that if you're talking about resilience, how much we would have advanced once all this money are spent for the good cause. Strategic foresight is primarily call for collaborative action, and I thought that it would be maybe interesting to do something very practical when we are discussing these issues with each other, maybe once in a semester, once in a quarter, to have just purely brainstorming session. What do you see on your horizon as a challenge for the future? I mean, the political scientists call it horizon scanning. What we see on the horizon, what can become major features for the future? What should be the challenge we should be ready to face? And I think that this would be something from which all of us could be really benefiting from the future. Despite or beyond horizon scanning, we also introduced in our report one chapter on megatrends. We are working with 17 of them. Our Joint Research Center developed the methodology on these megatrends. And of course, one of them is urbanization. How the urbanization is evolving, what kind of global impact it has. And I think already today we have 70% of Europeans who are living in the cities, and we expect that this number would go up to 80, 83, 84% by 2050. And therefore, we also decided to include in our impact assessments and in our future plans also the special way how we would do the impact measuring also in the link with respect for sustainable development goals agenda, where of course the goal number 11 you know very well, because this is about the cities, this is about the urbanization. I think that the challenges which would be ahead of us, and I think which will be amplified by the current crisis, are very much the same for all cities. How should we transform our cities infrastructure in the future, to make sure that there will be more ways for smart mobility, more ways for walking, cycling to work. How should we deal with air pollution? How we should help the cities which are under the most impact of climate change, especially the coastal cities or the cities close to the big rivers, which are suffering from unfortunately very often regular floods or other climate change induced new weather patterns. And of course, as you know, I'm working a lot also on European Battery Alliance and smart and electric mobility, where we are still, I think we'll be still thriving for quite a few years to achieve this holy grail of the smart mobility, to have zero pollution, zero accidents, and I would say zero traffic jams if we manage to really develop and implement also our connected cars strategy. And in that case, because I see how the sharing is being widespread in the cities, maybe we will have also zero ownership if it comes to the private transportation means. So these are, I would say, the challenges which I think would be ahead of us, and therefore I would say the exchange of the views on these issues would be very important. The last one, very important as well, is a demographic challenge. I think that our population in our cities is also getting older, and we expect that by 2070 the average life expectancy in Europe would be 88 years. And already you as a mayors, I'm sure you already know what kind of challenge it is to make sure that the social care, the houses for elderly are properly run. I know how sensitive it is in these days, where these establishments would be under very strict control to prevent any spread of the COVID-19 in these houses, because it's extremely dangerous and extremely sensitive. So I think that these are all the issues which are very practical, very human-centric, and therefore, and I would conclude on this before I would put a few more questions to you, is that we wanted to develop these new criteria, this prototype dashboards into something which I would describe as a well-being index. Because I think that also this crisis clearly demonstrated it's not always the high level of GDP, which is the clear criterion for the success in fighting the COVID-19 crisis. And therefore, I think that we would need to start developing the index which would bring us beyond the GDP only assessment. I know that GDP will stay with us for many, many years, but I think that develop the well-being index, which would better reflect the new nature of economy, new expectations from our citizens, and the quality of life in our society, is something which would help us also to have fairer assessment and fair approach to how we should actually evaluate the quality of life in our cities. And if you allow a few more questions from my side, I mean, how do you see our also possible cooperation or your suggestions from these interlinkages which are becoming more and more obvious, especially in the smart city context between the green and digital technologies? What you think about all the instruments which you know and came from the level of the European Union or directly from the Commission, how useful they are, which one you would like to change, and what would be your message we should do to make sure that cities would be not only very important participatory as you are in this European discourse, but also to make sure that we will also be in this collaborative mode in making sure that cities would play this very important role in this overall transition and transformation of European economy and European societies. And the last point or last question from my side, I'm also responsible for better regulation, meaning cutting the red tape, or making our systems work more smoothly and faster. Any suggestion there? Because I hear very often from our European leaders the question, how come we cannot build anything anymore in Europe? It's slightly simplified, but the gist of the question is that it's extremely difficult to invest in a new infrastructure, to invest in new big projects, and we know that the 21st century requires 21st century infrastructure for green digital technologies, and we know how very often this is a difficult task. So Jean-Paul, thank you very much for giving me the floor and for sharing with you some of the, I would say, impressions, lessons learned from COVID-19, and also to have that many questions which I hope you will help me to find the answers for, and I'm very much looking forward to other interventions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Šefčovič, for that introduction. It's a big agenda that you have, and we'll try and address some of these questions with some of the mayors that are here present and representatives of local authorities. I would like to invite straight away then Matthias de Klerk, the mayor of Ghent, Peter Kurz, the mayor of Mannheim, Fiona Twycross, Deputy Mayor of London, Pascal Smet, State Secretary for the Brussels Capital Region, and Lina Liaku from the Resilient Cities Network to join me. And thanks a lot to all of you for being here. As a first reaction then to the Vice President's introduction, I note these two concepts which to me are almost contradictory. No? The idea of generational shock, where you would imagine people are suddenly frozen, and at the same time, this high-speed transformation where you imagine things moving very rapidly. So let me go first to Ghent then, to Matthias de Klerk. How are you seeing that in the city? And how does foresight and vision help to be better prepared at city level? If you could just unmute yourself, please. Thank you, Matthias.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That will be better, Jean-Paul. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Dear colleagues, good afternoon on my side from Ghent. No, I think how are cities becoming more resilient in time of crisis? That's your question, Jean-Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very important question. It's crucial. I think cities are in a constant change modus, in a state of change. We not only respond to change, but also anticipate to produce future-proof policy. And this entails that we make policy not only for our generation, but also for the next generations. For example, in my hometown Ghent, you see the skyline, we want to become climate neutral by 2050. And we are already act today to reach that goal, for example, by developing a climate neutral city district. And it aligns well with the European Commission's ambition that we welcome to be the first climate neutral continent by 2050, and the very interesting project, I would underline that, to engage 100 climate neutral cities. And the current crisis show us an increase in the rate of change and a high degree of unpredictability. We often base our preparations on situations with the strongest probability, but if Corona has showed us anything, it is impact of low probability situation and the importance of asking what if questions to stress test our policies. And the situation also accelerated the introduction of changes that were in preparation for a long time. Maybe an example. First of all, working from home. The commissioner about smart cities, I think digitalization will be something to stay and to work on. Working from home has long been an item for pilot projects and testing, and now, due to the COVID, almost our whole city administration is working 100% from home. Also, of course, our front desk services and other offices that work directly with the people are still staffed. For example, also, as a city of Ghent, we were the first city in Belgium to hold its council meetings online. And 3, as part of our climate plans, we are already promoting circular economy and short chain initiatives. It helps our entrepreneurs during the crisis to survive, buying local, what was already implemented, but now has strengthened. So you see that some evolutions are going faster, are going stronger, and that's maybe there are a lot of negative issues, all negative to COVID, but if there are a few positive things that I think Europe and the cities have to work on to play a role in the evolution on that field. So I think that, Jean-Paul, is very important to mention.
Okay, so also the transformation of the public service itself in this
Yes.
whole crisis. If I turn now to Mannheim, the Commission also mentioned the SDGs and these kinds of general strategic frameworks. Is that something that you can build local action around?
Yes, thank you, Jean-Paul, and dear Commission and dear colleagues. Absolutely, we have our own mission statement, Mannheim 2030, based totally on the Sustainable Development Goals and localized them in a rather big project, a participatory project with the people. So what I want to stress regarding what the Commissioner asked is that it's really important to have, let's say, one framework. So if we have now resilience as a framework, sustainability as a framework, the well-being indicator, I think it's all the same direction, and so we should define what we want to have as a framework to localize this. We took the international SDGs for our local program, and of course, I think we have to combine the European approach and the local approach. For example, we had 4 weeks ago the 9th European Conference of Sustainable Cities and Towns in Mannheim, or actually it was quite virtually, and we had a Mannheim message with the obligation, or let's say the proposal, to have local green deals, and of course to have a connection with the local green deals and the European Green Deal. And in my point of view, the Green Deal on the one side and digitalization and resilience, I think it's quite the same. We have to address the same issues regarding these 3 topics, so they are quite interconnected. What in my point of view is very important, and what I want a bit to focus on is of course the governance issue. So the 2020 strategic foresight, we are thankful for it, and it mentioned the special need for reinforced participatory governance. And I think this is absolutely true. And because, let's say, cities are quite ambitious, they are not only close to the people, they are responsive. And this kind of policy approach is also needed to have it on other government levels. And it's only possible to have this with a real multi-level governance. And so right now, I think it's very decisive that the huge recovery and resilience plans from the European level, if they are brought to the national level, that there has to be a prerequisite that the national frameworks have to include the cities. And so the current framework is missing this opportunity for applying a real partnership principle. And so my question would be, how can you ensure as a commissioner that cities are partners in developing an agenda for the EU through strategic foresight in the recovery process and beyond? But the recovery and resilience facility now is really the biggest program, and I think this is now a decisive moment to really establish multi-governance cooperation and a multi-level governance, and to use this tool and to have a obligatory situation for the national governments to involve the cities in their national plans via the EU.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And it's also something that the European Parliament Vice President this morning, highlighted very much, that we should maybe revisit this concept of subsidiarity in this context. So I think this question of governance is something that we can ask maybe Mr. Šefčovič later to comment on, as well as the European Recovery Plan. Can I then maybe go to London, because in this governance system, it's not just about giving a bigger role for cities, but it's also how cities then connect much closer to the citizens. How are you viewing these developments in London, then the connection between the city, the citizens, and citizen engagement in your processes?
I think we have to make sure that citizens are part of what we do in terms of recovery from what is a generational crisis, really. So I think that we've got a London Recovery Board that brings together partners from across the city. So it's led by the Mayor and the Chair of London Councils, and it brings together a whole load of different people from what you might describe as the London system. And at its very first meeting, it set as a priority that there should be the involvement and inclusion of citizens at the heart of London's recovery. Because if we're not doing it for citizens, then who are we doing it for? And I think I was struck very much at the start of the session by the video which said that the future of Europe is in cities. And actually over the past few months, we've probably all heard that actually cities are in decline. COVID's shown that cities aren't sustainable, but I'm an optimist. I'm a city girl at heart, and I think that we've all got to work together to make sure that the future of Europe is in our cities, and that those people who we represent in whatever role we have within our cities actually work together, not just at a local level, taking decisions at that sort of as local a level as possible, but that we also see the opportunities to overcome some of the challenges by working together across the piece between European cities and between cities in our own countries. One of the things that we've really seen in London is that the effect of COVID has been disproportionate. So not every Londoner has been affected in the same way. In terms of health, mortality and income, the pandemic has affected most vulnerable communities most severely, particularly Londoners who are from Black and minority ethnic communities. So I think we will see this disproportionality continue unless we make sure that the voices of those who are most badly affected are heard in terms of what they're asking for and what they need from a recovery. So poverty and unemployment are rising and inequalities are increasing. So the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is clear that we need to put tackling this disproportionality at the heart of our approach, and both in terms of the response to COVID, but also in terms of what we're looking at in terms of London's recovery and making sure that London continues to be the vibrant city that I hope you'll all be able to visit at some point after we get through this dreadful time for not just for Europe, but for the whole of the world. So I think one of the things that I was very struck by was that the EU Strategic Foresight report correctly identifies that this crisis really does require an ambitious and forward-looking agenda. So I think that ambition has to be at the heart of what we do. And in London, we've approached this in adopting a missions-based approach, an approach we has obviously been also used in the Horizon Europe programme. So we've got 9 key missions around the main issues caused by or exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis. So these range from renewing our traditional shopping streets. We want Oxford Street to be somewhere that people from around the world want to visit. At the moment, it's really struggling, and we also need to recognise that this is also key if we're going to make sure that Londoners have those jobs that they need to put food on the table at the end of the week. In the meantime, though, we need to make sure there's a robust safety net to support those Londoners who are struggling to get by. Speakers so far have mentioned the environment. We're also developing a Green New Deal, which will help us tackle the climate emergency while creating some of those much needed jobs. And I think Sadiq Khan as mayor has really led on pushing the environmental agenda in London, and will continue to do that through the pandemic and beyond to what we hope is a green recovery. So the missions address long-term challenges like climate action and digital transition. I would say, though, that point about governance is key that was made. The point about collaboration is key. And both within London, where we're developing our missions and our recovery programme through collaboration with colleagues across the London system, if you like, we also think that it's really important that we continue dialogue across boundaries, and that we continue dialogue across Europe. I think today of all days that we recognise that sometimes the geopolitical context can have an impact beyond our borders, and this is just one of the reasons events like this are so important. I think that above all, I think it's we all need to make sure that we manage to maintain optimism, that we are optimistic and ambitious, because if we're not optimistic but put the things in place to harness the energy and ambition that we can put into this project of recovery beyond COVID, we will fail to deliver for our cities and for our citizens. So I'm keen to work with other European cities. We work very closely with Lena through the Resilient Cities Network and really value those relationships. So I am optimistic that we can do this together, and just want to say thank you for the opportunity to join you all today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fiona, for that intervention, and also reminding that citizens are not a homogenous group, and it's not just about competitiveness and growth, but also about inclusiveness and making sure that everyone benefits in the end. If we take then the Eurostar to Brussels and speak with Pascal, would you like to comment then on this question of governance and how to deal with also maybe this question of a population density growing constantly?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that there is a big challenge in the European Union, and there's a big tension gap between cities and the countryside. And I think that's something that we should not underestimate. As we have seen in the COVID crisis, there was immediately a kind of tentative of the countryside, the revenge of the countryside, to see how cities are places of all evil and how things go badly bad there. And so the only answer that cities can do, as I'm convinced with all of you that cities are the future, is to do better. And we must recognize that we are a concentration of big issues, challenges, problems, whatever word you want to put on it. It's the inequality, it's the need of digitalization, investment in more infrastructure, making more sustainable. And so the only answer that we as cities can give is to lead by example and make sure that we address these things. And then I want to make 3 comments on that to the European Commission. First of all, I know that the European Union as such only recognized member states. They start a little bit to recognize regions. I think that has to change. As the Commissioner has said, we are going to a future where 85% of all Europeans will be living in a kind of city environment. So the European Union should recognize and to some extent the existence of cities and take that as a structural partner. I know we have the Committee of Regions, of which I'm a member, by the way, but it's just kind of advisory. Maybe we should do something in there. But there is, in all the policies that the Union is developing, I think the place of the cities on a structural way should be taken into account. That's the first remark I would like to make. The second remark I would like to make is that it's very good to have dashboards to make assessments. But I think that you need a kind of positive competition between cities too. You know, in the past in Spain, you had this positive competition between Barcelona and Madrid. Every time that Barcelona did something, Madrid wanted to do it better, and vice versa, and both cities went upwards. We should have the same thing in the European Union, but in order to have that, we need a kind of comparison. So I think it would not be a bad idea if the European Commission could develop a kind of tool, audit, assessment mechanism that is standardized and that just makes a positive audit of all the cities in Europe that wants to do it. Let's start on a voluntary basis and then maybe further, but to compare cities. How resilient are they really? What kind of actions do they have to take? And why is this necessary? We all know when you measure things, you know things. And if we all say that the future of the European Union depends on the way her cities are developing, it's very important to have this tool that allows you to see where you are with your city. And today we don't have it. We have OECD who has some scans that they are doing. Other organizations are doing some scans, but that's not enough. We need a standardized tool, and I think it should be nice when that's been done on the European level. And very quickly, a last remark is that we need also in the future the investments in cities. And therefore, I think when cities want to make sustainable investments, the European depreciation rules, the budgetary rules should be adapted so that cities can make sustainable investments in their future. To give you a concrete example, in the city of the Commissioner, which is also my city, Brussels, if we want to invest in a subway line, we have to do that in 1 year in the budget. And then, of course, we will not invest it all in 1 year. It will take much more time to depreciate it. So I think these rules should be on a sustainable and a level and a long-term level being adapted. So to resume, cities are the future. So I think the European Union should recognize much more cities as a structural partner and enhance a positive competition between cities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pascal. We'll definitely go back to the Commission on this question of governance. I'm sure he has a lot to say. Before we do that, I'd like to just get also a word from Lina Liaku from the Resilient Cities Network. We talk a lot about resilience, so it would be also interesting to get your perspective in your work with cities there.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. So for the last 6 years, through the Resilient Cities Network, we've been working with our global community of cities, such as, for example, London and our chief resilience officers in strengthening the urban systems through collective actions. So I would like to share some insights from our work to date that are, I think, relevant to this discussion. And especially I want to focus on how we operationalize resilience on the ground. And this also connects with governance that both Fiona, the mayor of Mannheim, and Pascal mentioned. So one element here is how actually these kind of mega trends are translated to the local scale. And by local scale, it's not even citywide. It's like the neighborhood scale. And this is especially important when we're talking about vulnerable populations, community resilience, social resilience. The second is how we actually integrate resilience and foresight thinking in the statutory processes and the planning cycles of the city, whether these are urban resilient assessments, foresight reports, reflection exercises, because it's good to look forward, but it's also important to understand what has happened and reflect on that, and how this actually translates then into actions, how this translates into an action plan, into a roadmap on how actually you build your resilience. And we have examples within Europe, but also outside Europe, of cities that have done that. Now, the third element is how we ensure that we don't unconsciously create additional risks through our investments, but also how we maximize the multiple benefits of these investments. So I think it is important, and again, there are examples, especially from cities that have been vulnerable and have faced big kind of disasters and events, on trying to add this kind of resilience lens, whether this is what kind of Pascal mentioned around, potential indicators or some kind of tool on how you design your projects, or how you on how you assess, for example, your yearly budget in order to ensure that you actually don't create this kind of additional risks. The fourth element is how you actually create the necessary operational hubs within the local authorities, and how we ensure that there is somebody that actually has this mandate constantly. because this is not a one-off exercise. It's ongoing, whether these are resilience offices and chief resilience officers, or whether this is the strategic planning department, but there needs to be somebody that actually has the mandate. The fifth element is that this is not an internal exercise. If we don't reach out to the communities, if the people don't understand what this is about, I mean, this is half the job. And what we've seen, and this is one of the hardest issues we've faced, neither resilience nor foresight are easy terms to talk about with citizens or communities. And it is pivotal to find ways to actually communicate why this is important, why we make these investments, why we're doing these exercises. And also, let's be kind of open. Resilience is not a word in every language in our European cities. In certain countries, it doesn't mean completely anything, like nothing. So it is important to understand how we actually translate it. And the third element, of course, which has also been mentioned before, is multi-level collaboration. I mean, it's great to see the ambition from the Commission. I think we see the ambition and the passion from the city side. I think there's a regional scale and there's a national scale. So unless we actually create this kind of multi-level processes, we do like half the job. So I think there's a great momentum at this point to move the agenda forward and create this kind of multi-level approach. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lina. I think everyone has really insisted on this governance issue. So I would like the Vice President to maybe comment on this, and especially moving forward within the institutional framework. If you could just unmute yourself. We seem to have lost the sound for you.
Hi.
And now
yes,
it's better.
Perfect. Now we hear you.
Okay, so
are we now on the same page? Sorry for that. Dear colleagues, Vice President, dear friends, first of all, let me express.
Sorry, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Me or the lady?
No, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much, and excuse me, please, for the technical glitch. No, I really would like to thank for what I would describe as a positive energy in the discussion, and as Madam Leaku just said, the momentum, which I also feel there is not only in this group but around the role of the cities, and also the common shaping of the future, because in all three, I would say, pillars I was referring the beginning, green policies, digitization, and resilience, build up of our societies, all these frameworks, tendencies are very much based on how the cities would cope with the challenge and with the agenda. And I think that the remarks by Matthias, but by Peter, by Fiona, and also by Pascal, been very much to the point, and I noted several ideas which you've been bringing up. I think if I can sum them up, that you would like to have more structural cooperation. You would like to have the very practical tools where we can compare if we are on the right path, or how we can learn from each other, and that you would like to have more recognized, visible and practical role in drafting the future recovery plans, or being part of, I would say, this future shaping agenda. And I think this was, I would say, the part of all of your discussions. The first, what can be done right now, and some of the ideas which I developed while listening to your very to the point remarks. If it comes to the recovery plans, of course, we in the European Commission, we very much like guidelines, and it's very often necessary, because otherwise we get 27 sets of different plans, of different qualities, of different focuses. So therefore, also, if it comes to the recovery plans, we are working through the guidelines, and we are receiving already the first drafts of the recovery plans for the future. I can tell you that if it comes to the governance directly linked with the development of these recovery plans, so we are clearly underscoring our wish and our recommendation. They should be really based on broad multi-level ownership. And we are also asking the government, when they are presenting us the draft plans, how the regional and the local actors have been involved in the discussion, deliberation, and development of these plans. And we just presented annual growth survey for 2021, which is, I would say, kind of strategic assessment about how we see our economy developing for the next year, what should be the primary focus of our common action on EU and the national level. And there we also clearly recognize the role of the cities in implementing these strategies. So I would say that window here is open, but I think that it would also require, I would say, our common action, us proposing, suggesting, putting it on the table. Here I mean the role of the cities and your involvement into the plans, but also I would say the push from your side to be part of it, to come up with good ideas, good suggestions. So I would say it would meet somewhere in the middle, and that it would have also good responses on the level of the national government. What I think we can do on top of course, myself again transmitting I would say, most important part of our discussions to my colleague and to the president of the Commission. I think that we can focus also on very practical steps. I think that network which you have established, we can develop further into creating kind of network of the cities working on resilience, or the cities which are interested in developing their resilience, and working closer with the European Commission, where we can learn from each other based on best practices, where, as Pascal was suggesting, we can maybe over the time and with gathered experience develop some kind of standardized or assessment model, or the best practices model. So we have this positive competition in between the cities. And also, I'm thinking about possibility to establish the working group where we can use our, I would say, scientific facilities and possibilities of our joint research center, especially those parts of it who are specializing on the smart cities and futures of the cities development, with this network, which we can call, I don't know, Eurocities for Resilience, or I'm sure that we can come up with a good name, and really use that momentum, as Lina has said, to put to this, which I agree is very often for our citizens very abstract and theoretical discussion, something more practical. What the resilience means for your city, what the resilience means for your district in the cities, and how you compare our efforts, our results, our successes or failures to the other cities who want to learn from each other and work on this platform. So these would be, I would say, such a 3 suggestions. Let's push together, we from European level, you from local level, to the national governments. Let's think about, creating some kind of OB, the subgroup or coalition of willing of the cities who would like to go into greater depth if it comes to the resilience plans. And I will also look from within the Commission what would be the most practical way, the working group I suggested to set up between the JRC and these interested cities, and then I think we can then plan the discussion on this in the future to make it, I would say, as practical and as tangible as possible. That would be my best answer I can give you right now.
Thank you very much. That sounds like an open call for collaboration. So I'm sure the Eurocities network will jump on that. I think it's established now that we can rethink this governance system and the strategy around involving cities more in the future in these resilience plans. I would like now to turn to another series of mayors from other cities to look more at some of the operational plans that come out of these strategic visions, let's say. I would like to then introduce the mayor of Turku, Mina Arve, the deputy mayor of Athens, Vasilios Foivos Axiotis, the deputy mayor of Leipzig, Thomas Fabian, Diana Filipova, who is advisor to the mayor of Paris, and Pia Pakarinen, deputy mayor of Helsinki. So thank you for being with us. If I turn then first to Turku, Mina, can you tell us about some of the practical actions that you take locally to respond to some of these crises, maybe especially the COVID crisis then?
Yes. Okay, now it's my turn. Sorry for the interruption.
No
so,
problem.
Vice President, colleagues, dear friends, let me first express my sympathies for the people and colleagues in cities in Paris, Vienna, Lyon, and Nice. That is something, these kind of attacks needs resilience in the community, and we know that in Turku as well, unfortunately. But coming to this topic, so we are truly seeing a time of major transition, and at the same time, times are hard and difficult, but also present us new opportunities. And I believe it's very wise to approach resilience in this time as Commission has done, not only as coping with challenges, but also to undergo transitions in a sustainable, fair and democratic manner. And we have seen that this difficult time has also opened doors for new approaches and actions with regards, for instance, sustainability and city development. People are eager to see positive, concrete development around them during a time where it's difficult to see what is waiting for us around the next corner. And people are also looking for leadership from leaders close to them and possibilities to interact and take part, give their view. And in Turku, we have done our best to answer that call. As people seek for reliable information, I have undertaken weekly events online where we update the current situation for the citizens and also tell about progress regarding issues totally unrelated to the pandemic. And it's also streamed in Facebook, so everyone can really easily join and also comment. Another example has been helped by the huge leap in digitalization. A year ago, it seemed almost impossible to have a large meeting with ordinary citizens online. Today, it's something we do regularly to offer possibilities to engage here, but also in citizens panels, community events and workshops are growing more popular by the day. But after we have taken over this pandemic, we are not going to turn back time and return to time before COVID-19. We are going to enter a time after the pandemic. And it's time of citizen engagement. It's time for openness and mutual development. Thanks.
Okay, so some very practical ways of communicating with citizens and using the opportunities of the digital tools that also the Vice President mentioned, changing the ways we work. Excellent. If we go now to Athens, Vasilios.
Greetings from Athens. Thank you. Can you hear me, first of all?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Greetings from Athens, and thank you for the opportunity that you're giving to us in order to jump in and tackle the other question, how are cities, including Athens, becoming more resilient in time of crisis. So, actually, a new reality is taking shape in cities, and Europe and globally as well. And cities have been the hardest hit by the pandemic, as well as social, with the associated social and economic consequences. It's also in cities that the urgency of dealing with other major challenges, such as climate change, have become more and more conspicuous. So cities can become more resilient according to what we believe in terms of, according to the following context, which is preservation of sustainable economic growth, by taking exceptional economic relief measures for citizens and enterprises affected by this unprecedented health crisis. That can be done through suspension or even exemption, payment of municipal fees, things that we have done here in Athens. The second second measure can be through innovation and attraction of investment, which is of crucial importance for the economic development and subsequently for the resilience of cities. We aim at promoting entrepreneurship, skills training, and projects targeted for the integration of vulnerable groups in the direction of a more resilient economy through relevant digitally oriented structures and business incubators. Things that we have done here in Athens are Athens, the Athens Digital Lab, and also invest in Athens, some incubators. Third measure is safeguarding public health. Athens, along with most cities around the world, has had two hospitals on very successfully a plethora of actions that promote public health, ranging from street cleaning, disinfecting to multi-purpose clinics that provide medical and psychological support, as well as several other social services. Apart from that, we have enhancement of international cooperation between cities that you are so successful giving us the opportunity to do so, coordination of actions and exchange of know-how through international networks and initiatives. And of course, expansion and enhancement of green public spaces. We have the coronavirus crisis that has made it imperative to significantly increase public space and decongest the means of public transport through the use of alternative ways to commute. We here in Athens have a very big project ongoing, which is the Great Block of Athens that, among others, offers 50,000 square meters of free public space to the citizens and visitors of Athens, along with 7 kilometers of pedestrian walkways and 3.5 kilometers of bicycle lanes. So that's it in terms of measures that we have taken, and we think that that's the context that we are securely and most committed to guide in order to make it through COVID-19.
No, but thanks very much. I mean, it echoes very much what the Commissioner was talking about when he said, that we're going through high-speed transformation. It sounds like Athens is definitely going through that. So that's good to hear. If we go then to Leipzig, Thomas Fabian, can you also highlight maybe a couple of practical projects that you're developing there?
Yes, dear Commissioner, dear Jean-Paul, dear colleagues, let me give you a view from the city of Leipzig on how to become a resilient city. I think one of the most important lessons that we have learned, not only now during the corona pandemic, but also I remember 5 years ago in 2015 when we had to give shelter to a lot of refugees that arrived in our city. In every time when we are facing big challenges or in times of crisis, we need a strong public infrastructure. We need good public services. Of course, we always have to cooperate with welfare organizations, with the local economy, but I think especially in a time of crisis, we sort of even depend on our own infrastructure. And with our own infrastructure, I do not only mean our public services, our social services, but also buildings. We need a local administrations also needs buildings. Let me just give you two practical examples from our situation in March. When on March 16th, the pandemic started also in Leipzig, we found out that in times of crisis, special needs are detected, like women facing domestic violence. So especially in a time of shutdown, the likelihood of women and also children being victims of family violence are bigger. So we had to open a new women's shelter house, and we could only do this because we had a building that was empty and belonged to the local administration. We didn't need much time to rent a private house. Also, we provided more facilities for the homeless people who were also rough sleeping in streets. So we had another building where we could provide a roof for these people. So I think one of the most important things, especially if you want to solve problems practically, is you need a good public infrastructure, you need good local services. And this means, on the other hand, that we should be more careful with outsourcing services, with the privatization of local services. Of course, as I said earlier on, we need a good cooperation between the three areas, the public administration, welfare organizations, and the local economy. And another thing is that, of course, regarding your questions of the practical experiences, as we always point out, especially in the context of Eurocities, that the cities are always at the front line of solving problems, any problems, or most of the problems. So we need good support, not only from our national government, but also from the EU. And I must say, I'm quite happy that the President Ursula von der Leyen recently pointed out how important it is that the cities are supported with solving and with dealing with the challenges that we are facing. And I think that no city should be in the situation to choose between reacting immediately to the crisis situation and investing into the future. In Germany, we are quite happy that the national government and also the regional governments supported the cities, at least in this year, the year 2020. We think that the economic situation for us will be worse in 2021, because then we will not get the so much support. And we decided that because we are now planning the budget for the years 2021 and 2020, that we are not going to cut the budgets, and especially we are not going to cut investments. Investments in schools, investments in kindergartens and other public buildings that are going to be built in the next few years, because this will also support the local economy and it will make the city more resilient in the future. So I think investment, even in times, or especially in times of crisis, are very important. And I'm
sure the European Commission can help support some of those investments.
Sorry?
I'm sure. I'm sure the European Commission can help support some of those investments.
Yeah, I hope so very much as well.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We have to keep going, I'm afraid, because the time is ticking. So if you have a final word. Okay. So we move then to Paris. We hear a lot about Paris and the 15-minute city. 15 minutes is also roughly the time we have left before the end of this session, actually. But it would be interesting to hear from Diana how you convert the 15-minute city into practice from the Paris perspective.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to talk about the 15-minute cities, which is a very important project and concept that was presented by our mayor, Anne Hidalgo, during the campaign for the Paris elections. And this 15-minute city is really a way of thinking of building a city differently by starting with citizens want in what what is their everyday practice in the city. So Paris is already in a way 15-minute city because it's really dense, more than 6,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. So we have a quite interesting playing ground to experiment with this very local territory. The 15-minute city, of course, is first based on different way of thinking about moving inside the city. So 15 minutes basically is a way of moving around when you leave to find every basic services. For example, to work, of course, to buy things, to go to school, to educate, but also access to culture and local life. So this is very important for us, for the environmental and social transition, to provide from these sort of basic services that will be accessible to everybody, especially to poor areas in the city, in order to prevent inequalities to spread. So everybody, every single inhabitant in Paris has to access to 5 or 6 basic services in 15 minutes by foot. Of course, 15 minutes by foot or by bike doesn't mean the same thing for a little kid of a 5-year-old or someone who for the elderly. So it's also a way of thinking differently and including the diversity in our project. So this is why we have this very important idea to think about the school as being the capital of the 15-minute city, because in Paris we have a very rich network of schools. So basically every citizen lives 5 minutes from the school. So maybe we thought we can open the school more on the neighborhood and maybe install their activities, public services, democratic activities like commercial activities that would be accessible to everybody. Also to add a word about democracy. So participative democracy has always been a huge matter for our mayor, Anne Hidalgo. She put it first during her first mandate, and she will put it first today. So as a lot of you said before, democracy is the solution to the COVID crisis. We have to empower people, give them the possibility to explain how they want the city to evolve. People, of course, not only inhabitants, but also economic actors, NGOs, associations, everyone, even local deciders, so they can say what they want the city to become. So like really the democracy and construct some local, what we call citizen places, when everybody can participate or find public services or give their ideas to change the city around them. So I wanted also as a final word.
Yeah, as a final word, yeah. Thanks. Yep.
To highlight the activity of our local referent, Hermano Sanchez-Huevo, who is a referent for Eurocities in Paris and who leads a very important work on how to give the possibility to citizens to participate democratically in the decisions that will shape Paris. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Diana. It's nice to hear that the school will be at the center of the city. It used to be churches. Probably schools would be a better evolution. If we now then go to Helsinki and we hear from Pia Pakarinen.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
As quick as you can, if possible.
Yeah, I'll shorten my speech. Well, we all know that there is not coming back to old normal, and it has been inspiring to follow many of the European cities' quick actions to re-stimulate local economic development. At the same time, we know that the full economic impact of the crisis is yet to come, and the resilience and capacity of our cities is going to be put to test in the coming years. So international cooperation and market linkages are paramount to boost private investments, create jobs, and support the recovery and growth of SMEs and entrepreneurs across Europe. Helsinki wants a change from a reactive to a proactive city. The best functioning city, which we want to be, does not only want to wait for orders from the inhabitants, but actively propose solutions for their needs. Especially in times of crisis, we have to have our antenna ready to find the inhabitants that most urgently need our services. We know that 10% of the inhabitants cost almost 90% of the social and health expenses. Now, if we recognize these inhabitants at the early stage, we may be able to prevent them from becoming a burden to our system. That means both financial savings and less personal suffering. As Deputy Mayor for Education, I'm glad to say that Helsinki was quite resilient in education already before Corona crisis. We had 3 days to prepare for a move to remote learning in spring, and we did it. Digitalization and robotics are actually mainstream in education in Helsinki. Actually, at the moment, we are running the Helsinki Education Week with the latest inventions in digital education, which has risen worldwide interest. If you are interested, please have a look at helsinkieducationweek.com. So hold this week. What we have found especially important in times of corona crisis has been consistent and logical communication to the inhabitants, which Minna Arve already mentioned earlier. So people are distressed and they need reassuring messages. It is our task to make sure that even if the COVID-19 situation has been constantly changing and we cannot give definite answers that would hold for a long time ahead, we keep a certain consistency in everything we do and say. We have also been cooperating with our neighboring cities in order to avoid contradictory messages. In order to maintain financial resilience, a clear snapshot of the situation is needed all the way. Even if the future seems very dim at the moment, we have to be able to forecast our future tax revenues, which means, again, that we have to have the antenna out to monitor the impact of the crisis on the employment and economic activity. Cooperation with other cities, the state, companies, and inhabitants is needed. So the inhabitants are also here the key. All in all, we need out-of-the-box thinking, as the General Secretary Annalisa Boni pointed out in her opening words earlier. And we can do it. Thanks.
Okay, we can do it. Some words of optimism there. Thank you very much to all of you for having shared your perspectives from your cities. I now turn back to the Commission Vice President to try and make something out of this. I hope you've been inspired by some of the practical operational projects that have been going on in the cities, but the investments are required. And I also see in the Slido that there is a question here about where is the European recovery plan in action? How can this help support cities that have been hit hard by the crisis? So maybe a few comments on that as a final word from you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and I also would like to thank all the intervenants, I would say, in this round. I think when I was listening to Mirva from Turku, it was a little bit still the afterthought after the previous discussion round we have, because I think that, you know, this best practices comparison, this exchange of experiences, I think could lead to something what political scientists like to call the reference scenario for the future. And I think that cities and the future is such an important topic for the discussion that I think that once we start the conference on the future of Europe, this could be one of the topics. What is the future of our cities? You know, how we want to interact with the citizens, and the idea which was presented by Minna, that actually from one day into another we had to learn how to talk to our citizens via social media, via Facebook, via all these new modern tools, I think will be very much in place when we start the conference on future of Europe, because the idea, hopefully we'll get there, to have, I would say, large town hall meetings definitely would have to be postponed. And I think that people still would like to discuss the questions linked with the future of their cities, of their countries, of their children, and of course of Europe. And I think therefore this topic could feature among the ideas which the mayors could bring to the discussions, and we can have these discussions about the future of the cities under the umbrella on the Conference of Future of Europe, with mayor of the concrete city participating, some colleagues from other cities or members of the Commission taking part. So I think it could be something which could be very concrete, something to what people could refer to and see that it has, I would say, the practical and very concrete implication. Thomas and Vasilis, I think, been very clear on how quickly we are transforming and how important the strong public infrastructure is, how we need not only to have good services, but also buildings, facilities, close cooperation with local economy, and and NGOs. And as you rightly pointed out, Jean-Paul, you need investment, you need money for that. I just would make, I would say, 4 concrete remarks, and then I would have a little bit more concrete suggestions for the future framework of the discussions. 4 concrete, I would say, things I would mention at this stage, because there are many more tools, and I would not have, because of the time pressure, possibility to mention all of them. I think now it's very important time where, as we discussed a minute ago, we are discussing with the member states recovery plans. And as I said, and I would repeat it here, I think it should be our joint interest and pressure to make sure that cities are properly involved in this discussion. This process would last between now until the early spring. So I think that we have a time to kind of make sure that cities are properly involved, that their views are properly reflected, and I think this would be something which we can push on individual basis, but I think Eurocities on a collective basis as well. Once the negotiations between Council and European Parliament are finalized on the next 7 years budget, this multi-annual financial perspective, then of course there is a big work starting on how this enormous amount of money which comes on top of the recovery plans should be, spent in our member states. And there again, as it was in the past, where I think more than 100 billion euros been allocated for the cities under the cohesion policies in the current period, I believe that something similar will happen also in the future period, and it would be second, I would say, level or second aspect where I think that cities should be very actively involved, come up with the concrete ideas, project, and to be part of this, I would say, contracts and agreements which will have to be forged first on national level and of course between the government and the European Commission. The third thing I would mention would be the work which we do under our research and innovation platform, and you know that our new program, Horizon Europe, would be really massive. We are planning more than 990 billion euro to spend on research and innovation. And there is this joint programming initiative, Urban Europe, which is to become the knowledge hub for the urban transitions. So I think, again, for interested cities, for, I would say, this very important research which we should do to make sure that our cities are getting smarter and smarter, we should explore this possibility. And the last concrete remark I would make to the point of the cooperation between the European Investment Bank and the cities. We started this Urbis platform, I think, 2 years ago. Maybe at our next occasion, we can also invite my colleagues from the European Investment Bank, the Vice President who is responsible for the cities project, and discuss also a little bit with him how you like that cooperation, what is missing, what is lacking, what should be improved. And I think we can kind of brainstorm how also the EIB, and a very demanding mandate, because we are asking them to spend more than 50% of the lending capacity for promoting of the climate-related goals. And I believe that most of these, let's say, infrastructural projects will take place in the city. So I think also for you, it could be useful to have these direct contacts and debate also with the EIB how to use their tools. To the benefit of course, all of us, cities, EU, and of course the good EIB investment. And the last practical point I would make would be that we can maybe work as a commission together with Eurocities on some kind of, I would say, the guide or very short memo about what are the different possibilities for cities, or to get funds for certain projects, or to be part of certain cooperation. So you would have it, I would say, under one link that you would have it at your disposal. You can go into more depth if you are interested, and then use it. And again, that's an invitation. Let's agree that maybe in a year's time, we can agree that Eurocities will organize kind of feedback session. What do you think about these different instruments for cooperation. Are they still useful, or you don't use them at all, and we have them because we agreed about them some times ago, or you are missing something which would make your life much easier and the cooperation among the cities and the European levels much more efficient? So these been 5 very concrete remarks. I hope we can work on some of them, and of course I would be very much looking forward to stay in touch with you. Thank you very much, Jean-Paul.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for a very open and constructive dialogue. I'm sure the Eurocities network members will be taking these open calls for collaboration up. And I will, in fact, hand over straight away to Dr. Nielsen, who is Executive Director at Eurocities, who will be making some summary remarks on what she has heard in this session. And I would like to thank already also all the mayors who took part in this and who shared their perspectives. I'm sure also for the Vice President, it's a source of inspiration for his work as well at the European level. So thank you all for having taken part in this session. And Dorte, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and thanks to all the mayors, and many thanks to Commission Vice President Šefčovič. I know you're very pushed for time, so if you need to run, I'll be just 2 minutes in wrapping up, as you've already given a good round of feedback. I think what we've seen here, I just want to summarize some key takeaways from the perspective of our network. What we've seen here is a Commission Vice President in listening mode, so thanks for that. We've also seen a Commission Vice President who explicitly recognized the role of cities and the challenges that we're facing for the moment. There were many open questions from the Vice President. How do we work together to tackle the challenges that we have? And many clear proposals also from the mayors participating related to governance, strategic partnerships, the Recovery and Resilience Fund, and also to support for the mission for climate neutral cities. We've seen we've seen also practical examples and some commitments from the Commission Vice President. Thanks for that. Related also to partnership collaboration, and that the Commission is looking into the participation of cities in the Recovery and Resilience Fund, also at national level, and that we as cities also must continue, and we as Eurocities continue also to push for having the framework in place that allows that at European level. There are many practical examples from cities in terms of how to become more resilient in the second round in particular. And thanks for bringing up the conference on the future of the EU, Vice President. So how do we work with cities, and can that be a topic under that, which is an excellent idea, of course. And that is also the strength, I think, of the strategic foresight, where we look also on in terms of scenario developments, where we look at where do we want to go? What is our destination, and then decide the policy measures and how do we get there. And in deciding that future scenarios, you also create a longing for for what's waiting for us. And I think that also links very well to one of the comments that was made by Peter Kurz, the mayor of Mannheim, in terms of how do we develop one framework for cities, which if we in the current situation have many offers for cities, but maybe a little bit of a fragmented picture. And I think that's also leads back to the final comment from the Commission Vice President with a very nice idea in terms of developing, then maybe a short memo developing. We're very happy to contribute to that, of course, from Eurocities, an overview of collaboration tools and a feedback on what works and what doesn't work so well. So that is just the main takeaways, I think, and there are a lot of points to follow up on, of course, that we can do from the Brussels office and in collaboration with cities and with the Commission looking forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorte. So much work ahead, but done in a collaborative, constructive, open spirit, which is the only one we should have, and especially in times of crisis where we're all sitting at home trying desperately to be sociable with each other. So this was a very freshening session. Thank you very much. We will be live tomorrow morning at 10 for our third session of this Eurocities 2020 annual conference. The session will be on the green and just recovery, cities showing the way. So I hope you will be joining us live at 10 a.m. And for now, have a good evening and take care. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Europe is like a big city. a place for all to live and work, move and meet, and enjoy life. Most of our people live in cities. They produce most of our economic output and also most of our emissions. That's why the future of Europe will be decided in cities. Yes, our world and our way of life are fragile. Good that our network of European cities is working for a better future for all in the city of tomorrow. Together, we are shaping the urban future.